Hi, everybody. Welcome to a brand new episode of the Clear Descent podcast. This is a new episode on our Wi-Fi origin story. So I'm here with Francois. How are you doing, Francois?
Very good. How are you?
I'm great. And we have our special guest, Rasika. How are you doing, Rasika?
Very good. Doing good at the moment.
Awesome. Well, before we have everyone get to know you, I do want to thank our sponsor, Meter. Thanks to Meter for sponsoring this episode. Meter delivers a complete network stack from wired to wireless and cellular, all in an integrated cloud managed solution. So they're built for performance and scale. Head over to meter.com/cleardescend to book a demo. And we'll head back over to Rasika. Rasika, welcome to the show. I think it's your first time on our show, right?
Yeah, I think a couple of years or a few years back, I think I had some sort of I don't know whether it's like for the CTS or something else, like a community support of side, I had a sort of a podcast with you.
Yeah, and I think that's great because you've been very much involved in the community. So for those who do not know who you are, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. Actually, I'm Rasika Nayanajith, based in Australia, Melbourne. For a long period of time, I think people get to know me through one is actually Cisco Community Forum. That's what I did mostly, community support. And then I think through my blog, Wi-Fi community get to know me. That's how I think I create my image, probably like a sharing and caring kind of person, That's the sort of most preferred way I would like people to know me, more than anything.
Yeah, I think most people, even if they don't realize it, most people working in Wi-Fi has probably landed on your blog at least once. Because when it happened to me all the time too. You research something and then you end up on your blog, which is, if you guys don't know, it's the MRNCCIEW blog. I'm sure you've seen it once. That's Rasika's blog, and it happens. You're all over Google, man. You're all over my Google when I do search.
Yeah, if you're searching for anything Wi-Fi, especially with Cisco Wi-Fi, you'll land on Rasika's website, and it's a wealth of knowledge. So we'll include the link in the show notes just so you can check it out if you haven't been there already. But Rasika, when somebody talks to you, like when you go to these conferences and to other events, and people ask what you do for work, or maybe it's family members, how do you explain to people about what you do? Because I know it's a challenging thing to describe.
Yeah, sometimes I use nowadays the mostly enjoying part is actually mentoring and teaching. In that way, I always say I teach wireless. That's what I say to average person. In that way, sometimes they always think I'm teaching at a university or something like that. Sometimes hard to explain. Typically, our way of teaching, like a 3-4 days continuous teaching, and that's a class. That way, I think the average person, I will say I'm a Wi-Fi teacher or a Wi-Fi person who's teaching technology. And if it's a technical conference kind of audience, probably they know, pretty much I do consultancy plus teaching at the moment, in that way. That's what I use as explaining my job. But sometimes if it is some travel document, if that's what is your occupation, that's a hard part to tell, what is your occupation. I always, because I grew up as an engineer, I always use the term engineer. But sometimes what I really do, bit of that engineering kind of far from there, providing some services, consulting and teaching.
Awesome. Yeah, I think for me, it's hard to explain. If I say wireless or Wi-Fi, they don't understand it. And actually, I was shipping a Sidekick today to one of my guys, and the person behind the desk asked what it was, and I wanted to say it's for Wi-Fi validation service, but I resorted to it's an IT tool, and then they asked, what does it do? Is it like a network scanner? And I was even surprised the person said that. I was like, actually no, it scans Wi-Fi signals. And they're like, oh, okay. And I was like, oh, okay, you understand something about IT. And that's when they told me that they were in school for information systems. And I was like, oh, okay. So you're learning a little bit about some Wi-Fi. And so it's just interesting how we'll run into folks who probably will understand, but I've resorted to dumbing it down.
Yeah, most people think the Wi-Fi is from the internet service provider. So most people think you work for like, the Verizon, AT&T or whatever providers. That's what I've found. Yeah.
Yeah. So Rasika, since we all know you about being in Wi-Fi and wireless, I know it's probably all we really know about you. What is something people might find surprising to learn about you outside of Wi-Fi? Like what are your hobbies, or what do you do outside of Wi-Fi that's fun?
Yeah, like I think probably people don't, like sometime like in this industry, like I think my sort of a preferred kind of, like technologies, like yes, I like to work because that's keep my living going, but people doesn't realize, sometimes what I appreciate most is actually having a peaceful time, like not involved. I want to switch off from the world, like and go and silent, like that's what I want to do. I think probably a lot of people not realizing, like these two objectives are not like hand in hand. One side I'm going behind technology and trying to keep up to date with it, but end of the day, what I appreciate most, like some kind of mind balance. Like some sort of like a easygoing kind of thing. Like not to attach with so many things. That's what I like to do. My ultimate objective, try to be like a that kind of person. Sometime I will not saying that I'm stopping learning technology, but that is not something I will keep doing for maybe rest of my life kind of thing. It is not like that. It motivate bit, but sometimes the real motivation comes when I calm down.
Yeah.
At the moment.
Yeah. And I remember a long time ago at a Cisco Live, you told me you were practicing meditation, and you would do some walking meditation between sessions. Is that something you're still doing today?
Yeah, and I really like now. This is really or not. The honest truth is, like sometimes once you become your freelancing kind of consulting, the time goes and you don't find that balance. In that way, you always try to work hard yourself, and then you sometimes frustrated more. Why? Because you lose that balance you had. In that way, sometime at the moment, like I couldn't basically daily routine point of view. I would like to start a day like a half an hour, 1 hour kind of meditation, but for last 6 to 12 months that pattern has been broken. Like in that way, sometimes once something break, very difficult to come back again. Like you have to take a lot of effort. Like even small step every day, and then you feel like, hey, I am back to normal. Like that's what it is. Yeah, I think those days, I think if I look back past 10 years, I think that's a sort of a best side kind of time of my life. Like I had some daily practice that keep more energy for the day. Like yeah.
Mm-hmm. That and I remember the same. I remember when we were in Austin, you and I, and we went for a walk, and you were kind of teaching me the walking meditation stuff. That stayed with me. So, and I think people see you as a calm person, as a kind person, very caring, and I think it probably has to do a lot with that. You calming the mind and going back to connecting with everything.
Yeah, I think like end of the day now, not because I'm this technical or I have done this particular thing, but people respecting me for that aspect. Like in that way, I can feel like a lot of people appreciate me. Like I am very approachable. Like sometimes when they talk to me in person, they realize like sometimes they have a different impression. This guy may be like this, but I think based on the conversation, what I can say is like if you want to be like you be kind, and then people will recognize you. Like based on your act.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Well, I want to take many years back. I know for the three of us, we're kind of seasoned in the industry, and we get to this position where we're pretty busy. You talk about trying to find that balance, and I'm for sure been trying to find that balance this week. But when we first started, you had maybe more balance on the free time side. So when did you first realize that you were actually interested in IT, and when you were going to make that transition to being in IT?
Yeah, so now my journey is, like I grew up in Sri Lanka, like a small country, next to India. So now, like those days, like without studying, you cannot really, like in that way, my only pathway to basically study hard, in that way, I studied like to go to university. So that's how I ended up. I didn't know what I'm going to do, like I just went to the university, and then, like, I had a choice of choosing, like either computer science or electronic and telecommunication. So I felt basically, electronic and telecommunication is a sort of field, like gut feeling, and then study for, like specializing electronic and telecommunication. So now, once we graduated, like the biggest dream is to get a job in the field you studied. Sometimes people study engineering, end up with doing some management, accounting, some kind of jobs, like not in the field of your study. So my dream was getting into a telecommunication kind of company. Like in that way, I was lucky. Like my first job, I ended up in a service provider in Sri Lanka. So who actually provided services using wireless? That's how this wireless connection came into play. But I ended up in a division providing solution for corporate customers. Like what we call corporate technical solution. So that division used Cisco product. Like to providing the LAN kind of services and WAN. In that way, that's how I introduced to Cisco, and then I pick up some like certification, because I wanted to like I had that study kind of mindset. So in that way, my biggest dream was, once I get into Cisco technology, how can I basically master this? Like in that way, I think everybody know in the Cisco, you basically CCI is a sort of a premier prestige level of certification. Not many people in Sri Lanka as well had CCI, but I had met a couple of people who has done it in Sri Lanka, then get the inspiration to become a CCI. Like still, like wireless was not part of my, like yes, I work with a wireless service provider, but mostly I, like we use wireless links as a last mile connections, but mostly our job is designing customer LAN side of the network and configure Cisco routers and switches. So in that way, I was purely like a wired engineer working in a wireless kind of company, like a service providing company. Uh, Based on that CCI dream, I had to move out of the country because, like I'm not getting earned that well. Even that time, CCI exam cost was like about $1,000. But my monthly salary was not that, that way I can't do CCI while I was in Sri Lanka. So I wanted the opportunity to go out, like, again, I moved to Dubai for like keeping this CCI dream in my mind. I just basically achieved that because that was my pure objective of moving out of the country. Still, I was a routing switching guy. Like no sort of reconnection back with wireless. Like I think then I ended up migrating to Australia. So that's where basically I ended up in the university environment, big wireless network, and like I had to basically pick some skill providing some strategy roadmap. So then, having CCI background in routing switching, I decided why not basically I'll go for wireless. I think that's a sort of main sort of a reconnection, and then at that particular time I start doing my wireless journey. I think that's journey documenting of my wireless journey through my blog, people seeing me as a wireless guy. So then I thought, why not basically just refocus to wireless and just stay in the wireless technology. Like I was not expert anything like that. Like people know my story. Like that way. That's what I want to tell everybody. Like sometime we all starting from somewhere beginning very zero. So, but once you start developing yourself and work in this technology for a period of time, you will get some good grip, and then you feel like, hey, I know a few things, and then people like learning from you. That's what you know now I don't want to basically like again diverting my like I still keep focus wireless as a main, but now doing consulting work. I'm not only wireless. Sometimes customer want to do the end-to-end network refresh kind of thing. I am like having the background of wired side, still feel good, but I try to stay as my primary technology, let's focus on wireless, because sometimes even wireless, we all know, like we only knowing like a 1%, 2% of wireless, like that way. More and more you basically go deep, then you realize, hey, you don't know this. I feel that is exciting me, to keep still focus on wireless and just like learning what's coming and explaining in a simple way certain things I know.
So did you end up working in Wi-Fi because the university team had a need to have someone work on certain problems, or it was just something that
I think
interested you?
my role was like a team lead. I didn't wanted, my role did not really wanted me to learn, but I expected my team to basically manage and maintain and future looking, providing her some kind of roadmap. But everybody know how to keep it lights on, like wireless, but they didn't really put that effort to look at ahead, how we should do. Even myself, not having any background on Cisco wireless, I had to pick something basic, like basic mean go a bit deep, sometime. That's the main reason. Then, I still work as a team lead and manager, but I put my hands dirty when it comes to wireless work, in that way. I keep technical side of it.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, so you're telling me that you didn't have to, you were just interested in maintaining your...
My role did not expect me to learn and do upgrade and other things, like learning the controller code upgrade, all this particular thing. But sometime like a best way of learning is doing, okay, in a way, like sometime even for my, I use every opportunity I had back in 2012, 13, to get that hands-on experience side, because I was studying for lab, but sometime in real world is bit different scale, so you will always face different challenges.
So during your go ahead into Wi-Fi, because it sounded like it was more of a curiosity thing in your role than a dictated thing you should have been doing. Did you have any mentors as you were going into Wi-Fi? Because right now I would imagine a lot of people look at you as a mentor. So who was the mentors?
I think some when I study for Cisco Wireless, you naturally, that's where I went to Cisco support community, ask some questions. I think those time, George Stefanik, I think he's one of top contributors those time back in 2012, 13. So then we look at him, I think he's one of the mentor, I would say, even my early career of wireless journey. I think he lift me up, like the forum as well, sometime that's the one thing, like sometime when we coming as a beginners, so some people not encouraging, like you don't lift people up. I think he's a one person, I would say, early stage of my career, like through Cisco community, I get to know him. And then I was lucky enough to, meet him in person and more closely work. But I would say him. And then I think Steven Rodriguez as well. I think he's also right now working for Cisco. Those days, he was one other. I think that Cisco community people inspire me. I would say they, like initial mentors. And then I think Chris Evans, probably know him as well. I think he, another person, like helped me a lot. Like coming, and then wireless community, I think we all know, as a whole community, I think they really, help me, at least, giving some encouragement, even like WPC whole community. I think that encouragement is the way I am keep still going, but I still remember those people who helped me in the beginning. So my local, I didn't have a sort of much of the mentors like that, because I was doing a role, like not like a wireless specific, not wireless point of view, but like now after a couple of years through blog, the community, I think there are many people, I can say, at early stage, I think Chris and George Stefanik,
Okay. Yeah. And I remember speaking to George and asking him some questions as well. when I started getting more into consulting. So he was very much someone who shared a lot of information. We don't see him as much anymore in the community, but I'm sure he keeps tabs on what's happening. All right. So why don't we talk about, as you got into Wi-Fi with CCIE and also blogging, do you remember what your first Wi-Fi project was and what you really remembered most about it? Because if we look at some of our previous projects, I remember doing it completely wrong. So I don't know if that was the same for you.
Yeah, I think at the time I was working for a university, maybe like if I can recall, maybe like my interested project was actually like doing something. I think Cisco changed the technology. They introduced something called converged access. Like again, I was just excited. Like I'm CCI guy. Like I wanted to try something new, and then that was some kind of like a learning point of view as well. Like went to a technology sometime not matured enough. And then I think as a whole, like what happened, that technology not really worked well. So, but like early days, I think the RF side we didn't have any tool. To be honest, I think initial few years, like we deploy Wi-Fi without having any proper RF modeling. Like even not Ekahu, nothing. Pretty much guesswork and deployed, and like still wireless work that time. But like over a period of time, uh, like RF side, pretty much without sort of a planning, we just go ahead and planning mean like a guesswork and deploy. But other side, I think the controller side upgrade maybe a sort of initial project. We had something called Vism, like and then those are 6500 blades, managing wireless, and then we moved to 55 OA. That was an initial kind of project I can remember, but exciting, or at least a learning point of view. This converged access migration was a one thing I remember.
Okay, yeah, I remember working on WISMs as well and having to migrate off of them. And so I can feel your pain if you've ever gone through some of those transitions or have worked on multiple WISMs. It wasn't easy back then. And hopefully no one else is on WISMs now. They're probably on newer infrastructure at this point, I hope. If you're not, Rasika can help you with some of that work. How about when you really started getting into Wi-Fi? Did you have a moment where it really started to click for you, where you're like, "Okay, I'm starting to understand this, and I'm starting to get a feel for understanding Wi-Fi, how it works, the communications"? Like, what do you remember when that moment happened for you?
Yeah, I think like my journey, I went like a Cisco CCI wireless, and then I asked a question myself: do you know wireless? Like I think answer came from my within me as well. I don't know wireless. That's sort of like Cisco, how to basically navigate, configure things. But if I ask the question, are you a wireless expert, or can you explain wireless to someone? My answer was, I can't. Okay, in that way, that's where I think the CWNP, like that CWNA, that journey, I think that's sort of a initial kind of moment to, like to realize, hey, you are not, like know the technology well. I think that's the initial part, like not a surprising moment, but like you ask yourself and get an honest answer, and then I accepted that, and then I just moved to CWNP path. I think that's a sort of biggest moment for me. Even you can be a CCIE, but you may not know how wireless works. Uh, the other thing, like sometimes as a technology, like sometimes wireless is not good for everything. Like what you do in the typical enterprise environment. Like sometimes one example I can say is, like we had university some IPTV services. Like those days, residences like a student accommodation unit, they were having wire. They were using all this copyright infringement, copying, pirating the download movies and other things. Every day we get a complaint. In that way. Now we said no problem. Let's go Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi should work everything. Like then we hardware realize. Sometimes we use some multicast kind of services. Those are not going work well with wireless. In that way, like after a lot of testing, like myself, because I was interested in want to look at the inner detail. uh, like so then like we realize like sometime don't always think every application works really well with wireless and then say wireless can be a fix for every endpoint. Like then you need to decide somewhere like a TV kind of give a wire and do with wire rather than multicast versus unicast. I'm sure vendors all implementing unicast kind of services. They don't really transmit over the multicast. Yeah, always multicast to unicast conversion when they're doing is best for that kind of services.
Mm.
So yeah, those kind of initial learning, but bigger sort of thing is actually you can be good at one particular product, vendor product, but always I would say now go breadth at your beginning of the journey. Like don't really look for one and go deep on that. Get a breadth of knowledge, like some high level, and then pick and choose what's demanding you to go depth. Like if you're working with Cisco product, just go depth in Cisco product just to achieve that outcome. But always have some breadth your skill set. That is a sort of a look back and advice wise. That's why I always sometime even I am a CCI and CWNE both. I have gone through the journey. I always say CWNP journey is the best journey. Like why? That will make a good Wi-Fi engineer. And then you will pick, depend on the vendor product you work with, you will master that on demand basis. Like it's not
Yeah.
like, yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree, because once you've understood how the technology works, you can just apply that knowledge to any vendor. And I think that's where a lot of the value I get out of learning comes from, rather than just sticking into one vendor. Although, sometimes we tend to lean on one vendor because that's what we get used to, and works with our flow and our experiences and how we want to integrate things. But I think it's you have some great tips there, especially going down the CWNP path. And I just want to take this time to actually talk about one of those vendors. This episode is sponsored by Meter, so I want to thank the fine folks there at Meter for supporting our show. They're actually a company that builds better full stack networks while still giving you that full control and increased visibility, because we had just talked about understanding the wired portion and seeing what's happening on the network, and then getting that tied into Wi-Fi. So you can even get your ISP through Meter's dashboard, which is actually pretty neat, because you can go shopping there and pick the ISP you want and start booking that. So you can head over to meter.com/clear to send to book a demo. That's meter.com/clear to send to book your demo. All right. So I think you recently outlined some really great tips for people because of the CWNP path. I think that's always critical for somebody who's getting into Wi-Fi and really wants to understand how Wi-Fi works. And you mentioned going through CCIE. What are some other ways that you've grown your Wi-Fi skill set besides doing the blogging and the CCIE studies?
Yeah, my main study at the time, like I pretty much a self-study kind of thing. I got the books, like I had this sort of a, go through the books, like, and I think the best way of learning is teaching. In that way, sometime, like I think through my blog as well, I think sometime when I write, I learn. I think writing is a sort of a way of like emphasizing what you know. Sometime like I blog about my understanding of technology. Sometime I may be wrong, but at least like that helped me to keep sort of solidifying my knowledge. Like I think yeah, doing some real like hands-on lab. I think home lab is a sort of a like still even today how I learn is through home lab, and like always try to create some scenario. Like uh, that's like even like that's the best way I'm learning. Sometime now like we have a limited opportunity to learn. Like we have some certain certification path, and then like what's other options available, limited option available for formal learning. In that way, that's why sometimes I go to conferences. Even small thing I learn, like I try to like if it is I hit my interest, I try to reproduce or do some home related to that, and then try to see in my hand, like my eyes, how it works, kind of thing. I think home lab and mostly self study, those are the two avenue available. I would like, there are many opportunities available for us to go and sit down in a class and learn something, but that kind of formal learning is a bit rare nowadays. You do it yourself and lab it up, and then sometime, I always, try to understand the technology like Wi-Fi 7, even concept wise. I'm not fully grasping all those small pieces, try to lab it up and then see how it works. That's how the best that's how I'm learning and even teaching as well. You have to know it well before teaching, in that way. I can't teach if I don't know something, in that way. I have to make sure I have some demonstration, lab setup is going. That's a sort of learning as well. How about you guys? What you guys are doing?
I found that, listening to you, I found that, when you start teaching a lot, you don't find the time to attend teaching sessions, You're okay. It's harder to find the time. But it is quite important for me. Nowadays, most of the time that I grow my knowledge is by watching presentations. Right now, I'm watching the WPC presentations. These are, there's a lot of great technical content in these. So I really like them to learn about, what other people are doing or reinforce what I'm doing. Working on the podcast, creating content also help us, doing some research, preparing some stuff and better understanding. Like you said, if you know something, you can talk about it. If you don't know about it, it's a little harder. So, when you start creating content and talking to people, if you know the stuff, it's a little easier to do it properly. So, for me, I found like that's, most of what I do nowadays is either watch presentations or do research for content I'm creating. Sometimes I get to lab stuff up, even though now I'm not, alone for that anymore. But sometimes I do it. I tend to try different things as well, like different automation stuff. Sometimes I get lost in. Right now I'm getting lost in vibe coding, which is very addicting. It's really hard to stop when you start. But yeah, it's nice to discover different things and learn new things as well.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. And I think like you, Rasika, when we do consulting and then you've got, family obligations, and then you've got other things like you're teaching as well, you tend to, like what Francois said, you don't have the time to dedicate to learning new things. And so for me, it just becomes more of a just-in-time learning. So if I need to pick up a technology, so for example, over the weekend, I had to pick up BGP. And so I know about BGP from when I've studied the Cisco certifications a long time ago, but it's been a while. And so I just needed to refresh on very specific things that I needed to implement for BGP. And so for me, it's like, okay, let me get that documentation. Let me see the vendor's documentation versus what is in the standard, and then try to understand how that works. And it's the same for Wi-Fi 7 is for us. Like we may not, like in the past, me and Francois would read the 802.11 standard, the amendment, and go through all of that and then talk about what we want to talk about. Today, it's more like, hey, let me just look at one piece of that Wi-Fi 7 component. Maybe it's just going to be MLO, and I'll just look at that and understand it. But then setting aside the time to do packet captures and really understand how it works, like it takes a lot of work. And so for learning now, I end up planning my learning, meaning I treat it like a project. I'm like, okay, I need to learn this. These are all the tools I need to have in place in order to understand how it works. These are the devices I need to have in order to understand how it works. We just become more strategic with what we do with our day-to-day. It's like all very planned out. So that way you're not spending extra time that you need for something else. So that's just kind of like how my life is at the moment with learning.
And you, Rasika, like in your learning experience, how did the community and the conferences influence your journey?
Yeah, I think like a Cisco community, I think it's a big like place in that kind of thing. That's where I
Yeah.
think my most of the time goes for something. I think that 10 years of my contribution to the community, I think I would say still it's a very well rewarding kind of thing, in the sense you get that satisfaction, you help somebody, now past 12 months I couldn't do it that much as I wish. Now I don't have that satisfaction, every day I helping somebody kind of mindset, because I don't spend that much of time. That's sort of once you lose it, you will not re-energizing, doing something like that. In that way, I think I still wanted to go back because I like that kind of feeling. Hey, you help somebody somewhere in the world. Doesn't matter who it is. At least you did something. Like that feeling is always valuable to have with you every time. Um, I think conferences point of view. I think back in 2009, I think so 2018, we all met Cisco Live that time. Do you remember? I think maybe I can't remember, Florida or somewhere. So now
San
Cisco
Diego.
Live.
It was San Diego.
Yeah, I think San Diego as well. We met. So now, but still, I didn't have that impact that much to my life. That big conferences, Cisco Live, those kind of thing, because you go, you meet some friend circle, but no, sir. But when I first time I came to WPC in 2019, okay, I think that make a huge difference. I think that's the first time I think most of the community see me in person. I didn't really, because I'm based in Australia, Melbourne. I don't go for anything outside of my own kind of country. But WLPC opened up that first time I went to Phoenix, 2019. I think I had a lot of respect. People, treating me like a superstar. In that way. Sometimes I'm not seeking for that kind of recognition, but then I realize, what I have made over a period of time. That community basically respecting me that much, all the effort I have taken, even my blog, I didn't really start writing things to get popular or anything like that. Naturally, basically people consuming it. I think WLPC is a sort of a conference really lift me up, and then giving the opportunity to keep on teaching and even presenting sometime, like a skill point of view, that's some skill I still don't have very much, public speaking skills, but sometimes in front of wireless community, I don't have any hesitation to go and talk or share the knowledge, they all know me and respected in a way. In that way, I think to growth perspective, I would say that WLPC conference really make a difference. In that way, I fortunate to go to Europe and US event more regularly, and I still like to go for that conference. Even I don't teach, I like to be there. Sometime that connection, re-energizing. That's I think Keith always talk about, it's a human people. Sometimes that feeling is very important, that way you feel like surrounded like some people to talk about your problems, or at least like whatever it is, you meet some close community. I think that conference, I would say, now I think YCO event I have seen a couple of them uh, in the APAC region. We don't have one strong one, probably, like sometime I think Peter McKenzie also wanted to have something in the Australian region. I think probably we need to have a local gathering as well. Otherwise, these two conference comes in 2 times a year. Sometimes it is not good enough. You should have a more local gatherings, or at least some wireless community gatherings.
Yeah, especially in Australia, you guys have a lot of people there that do Wi-Fi, and that's the power of WICO, is you also gather people that can't go to WLPC, and it's expensive, it's far away for you guys. You could definitely develop a little WICO event over there. It's going to be the competition though between Sydney and Melbourne. You're gonna have to.
Yeah, it's basically the case. It's like you always
Somewhere in
say
the middle.
Melbourne is the best.
You mentioned some of the problems that you talk to people with, like the different Wi-Fi issues you come across, and you share it with other people at conferences. Do you have a favorite Wi-Fi troubleshooting story that comes to mind?
I would say, like that QoS kind of thing, like I think, but I don't know, for me, the QoS and multicast being some kind of services, I don't know why. Maybe my CCI days, they teach me something, like those two technology, like excited me. In that way, I think the early days of Wi-Fi, like I think we had some even soft phone we are testing, things are not working, like I think, like not marking properly, like I think I took a lot of captures, just to understand all these devices, Apple, Samsung. I think, like uh, yeah, lack of quality of service, like I think that one troubleshooting university time, we had some wireless over voice over wireless kind of services as well, but I think 7925 kind of handset we had limited places, but at the time we were trying to give these soft phone services, in that way didn't think work well. But now look back, now we all know it is not doing well. That's a given kind of thing. We are not taking that serious because client device is not marking QoS properly. But those days, without knowing those kind of thing, we anticipated things work well, but then ending up not giving good quality of services. Um, I think that understanding the QoS field of wireless frames and realizing client device not doing the marking properly is a one good learning for me those time.
Is there
Yeah.
any deployment that you were proud of? I'm guessing you did a lot at the university. Huh?
Yeah, because my main sort of like example, if I had now 2012 to 2025, like a 13 years of span, I may spend like a good 10 plus years or 12 years at the university. In that way, my deployment experience like goes to the education sector, managing large scale wireless. uh, yeah, I think like even that converge access is like a failed technology as a whole, like but I'm proud of like what I tried, because not many people worldwide didn't go there because it's a too bleeding edge. And then a lot of people burned their hand, like because of things. But I am not went to the full university. I think biggest sort of learning is always go with couple of building where the IT sits, and go and deploy. They will forgiving you, like they will tolerating you. But if I deploy like a campus wide, I think I lose my job. So it is like so at least 1 year, 2 year, we were running that, fighting hard. Say that's good, but then we roll back to normal wireless.
That's it, yeah. The students will get the best of you, huh? If you don't give them the proper Wi-Fi.
Yeah, they pay our bills in that way. Sometimes we think students are not important. We always saying staff, wireless, everything need to be good, but you need to understand what's the sort of who pay the bill. Like in that way, if student pay the bill, give a good experience for student. I think that's the one way of looking at it. Actually, if they are, like experience good, they will keep coming. Like
Yes. Well, you know what I love about students in universities is that they complain when it doesn't work. In many environments, we don't hear about the users, and it's like it's this very frustrating feeling where it's like, I don't know if it's working well. We don't hear from the users. In the university, if it doesn't work, you'll know, and at least you can work towards fixing things.
Yeah.
So you have that
sometimes
feedback.
finding this kind of thing, student doesn't bring it to the service support. They always talk about their social media group. Hey, this is crap. Something happened. So sometimes even the support services, we are looking at those kind of social media kind of chats to see what's they're talking about. Like in that way, sometimes you have to be smart to pick the things. They will not bother about going through this formal process of reporting and 2-3 hours of the line. Wasting time. They always say, hey, something bad. That's like I think maybe if you don't see that kind of social media things, then probably you have a doing good job. You're keeping things.
That's the goal. I don't like to see any issues pop up on social media for your environment. I think that's always kind of scary, especially when other people in the organization are monitoring social media, and then they have to go and send that over to you going, hey, what's up with this guy over here?
So you mentioned that you now work on your own. You do some consulting, some teaching. Listening to you, I was wondering, why didn't you just go work for Cisco? Why did you decide to just start working on your own?
Yeah, I think I always I didn't have a dream work for Cisco, but sometimes a lot of people think I work for Cisco. Why? Because I sometimes promoting them too much. Because my always drag as he's a Cisco guy. Because people think I work for Cisco. They're sometimes surprised saying that I'm not working for Cisco. Because they see me as a Cisco sort of a influencing guy. Now I think when I moved out of the university, I had to make a decision what you like to do most. Sometime I always had the fear of, sometime, yes, as a company, Cisco may be a better place for me to get a good job and be happy about. But sometime if I will it end my teaching career, can I still freely go and teach and do this kind of thing? I would say sometime I had to limit myself, sometime I cannot do both world, in that way. So now at the moment, what I my ultimate goal as well, to be free and basically not to basically attach too much. And then I'm trying out motivation to basically consulting, self consulting as well. I want to do like a 6 month of work and take 6 months off kind of thing. That is ultimately if I can. But I know it is not the. I'm starting my consulting work. It is not sometime. I had to work more than the 365 days to keep going. Like that way. Early stage at the moment, I'm still feel like I'm not what I wanted to be. Finding that balance. But I really want to actually grow some consulting work and not do throughout the year. I want a good quality 1 month off, and my family can go. I can switch off from the world and do what I like to do. In that way, that's the ultimate objective. I think keeping all these things in mind, I still think going back to a one employer and do the work sometime maybe not the right choice kind of thing. That's the one thing I'm hesitant now. Sometime we are not like a 20 year or 25 years energetic guy. I wish I was like that, but I always now looking back, looking forward, always thinking about how to slow down kind of thing, rather than going crazy, so in that way, keeping all these things in mind, I still but otherwise, I, I would say if I had to choose now, this is not working well, you pick a one, then I would like to go for Cisco, something like that, because that's where my contribution most, and I think I'm passionate about Cisco technologies and can do a job. But I still I'm trying. My ultimate objective is there a step closer to that. That's where I'm still struggling in the consulting side of work and find that growth.
Awesome. I think it's an interesting journey.
Yeah, I was going to talk about your kids, because I remember when you first came to the US in San Diego, and your son was talking to me about he wanted to do like a YouTube channel. And at the time, he was pretty young. I can't remember exactly. And then now your kids have their own Wi-Fi YouTube channels. And I watched the video the other day. It's so nice. It's so nice to see. And I remember your son telling me that he wanted a camera for YouTube. I was like, man, he really followed his idea there, and he went all the way up to starting his own channel. And I saw that on your site you have a little link to their YouTube channel.
At least now sometimes I feel I'm trying to encourage or mentor the rest of the world. Sometimes, hey, what about these guys? Like in that way. Now my eldest daughter, she's now 16. She's not listening to me. In that way, I can't really very hard to basically get her to something. Like in that way, I basically look at other two. I feel they're also going the same trajectory. Like they may not do what I like to do, or in that way, I gave them some kind of like now I think even teaching point of view, sometimes they will always say, hey, Rasika, you're talking about so deep certain things, sometimes people doesn't really get that like a
Yeah,
niche, and
connect.
yeah, in that way. I really wanted to even I can't teach for kids this level, so in that way I wanted to them to basically come up with some things very basic, now I think they have done like a 6-7 episode, but I feel even they're trying to teach others kids, they're the one learning, in that way.
Mm-hmm.
That's the
Mm-hmm.
hidden objective of this particular thing, motivation. Hey, you basically do this because they always like to travel like me, but then I told me I learned wireless and I gave that teaching that's allow me to travel, in that way.
Yeah.
If you
Mm-hmm.
want to do something like that, pick some skill, and that will opening up your way. I'm sure one time I really wanted to bring them to WLPC. They haven't basically experienced WLPC. They experienced a bit of
Mm-hmm.
Cisco Live and some community there. You know like I feel those two younger ones, they basically connection very very well. I think you guys have a success of this podcast series because you conversational people like to listen, like the each other's
Mm-hmm.
opinion or idea. I think I wanted to have that, otherwise I cannot motivate one person. Sometimes even my son, sometime I always said one video a week, Monday you have to do something,
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
sometimes they until they come to they were not excited. Sometimes once they start, I can see that some excitement. They were talking like they know this thing well. Uh, I can see that particular spark. That way. I think again, objective is to keep going as much as they can. I hope
Mm-hmm.
sincerely. Still, it is like a not huge kind of interest because kids they don't think learning Wi-Fi is an interesting thing, but we
Mm-hmm.
want to make sure we plant some seed, and then generate some inspirational kind of people, for wireless community to grow. In that way, that's the idea. Maybe 5-10 years time, if they keep going, I'm sure that will become a one sort of important channel. But at this stage, my motivation is not to let these two young guys completely deviating from what I'm doing. At least to get
Yeah.
some
Uh-huh.
grip of it and then comfortable, and then at least to take my footstep.
I
I
was
think that's excellent.
disappointed though because I didn't see them in the list of presentation for WLPC. I I maybe next time you can tell them they
Yeah,
can
one
come and
day,
do a little.
sometime, yeah. But I
Yeah.
will definitely sometime maybe in Europe one probably I'll bring some family at least to see the community, and at least they have some opportunity to see the other side. I think Europe, US, they
Yeah,
came once.
Hmm.
that's that's one of the things that I was able to do just working for myself is bring the family and it's
Mhm.
really nice. Yeah, they can just do their own stuff and you just travel as a family.
Yeah.
It's really nice. If you can do that, it would be. I know you live far away. You live very far away, but it's very nice. I'm sure they'll all appreciate it.
Yeah, one time when I think before I bring them to US and show them the sort of people how appreciative of my work, they didn't have any clue of what I'm doing. They always in the negative side. I'm spending too much of time on the community and no family life. What's this life? And they always blaming me. Hey, what you're doing? You're not focusing on family. At least once they see that community, they change their mind in that way. Even
Mm.
they don't understand technology, but they sometimes they know sometimes even I'm sacrificing time I spend for them, but I have given to
Mm-hmm.
somebody else, and that creates some kind of positive movement. In that way, I think now they don't have blaming me like I'm not spending on the community side of that much time, but I think
Hmm.
still family. I think you need to show them the bigger picture. I think once you see the bigger picture, lot of problem will go away because they whatever happens they know the bigger value. In that way,
Yeah.
I think yeah, I think in that way my life as well. Sometimes I spending a lot of time on the content. Sometimes I do free of charge. Why? Because I spending sometimes I think still think most valuable things are free in this world. Okay, in that way, sometimes even you're sharing your knowledge. If you can do, I'm not saying that you have to free do everything free, but sometimes free if you give something free, you will get something free. In that way,
Yeah.
my way of basically sharing some good quality sort of content is a way of basically I do my part, like even if something happen bound to happen, it will happen, in that way. Even my YouTube channel, all these particular blogs, my motivation is to do my part, and then let it be whatever the rest of the result of that, what is the
Yeah.
result, I'm okay with whatever the result is.
Awesome. Well, I think you've given, I was going to ask you what you would give some newcomers advice into entering Wi-Fi. I think you've already given them more than what I was expecting. And I do like the idea of incorporating your kids into that space as well and having them do something. And I like that they're creating their own YouTube videos, because I tell that to my kids as well. I tell them like, hey, you got to balance something between watching and consuming something and maybe doing something yourself. Maybe you create something, and then somebody else will watch what you create. Like, get into a different mindset of creating something, making something for somebody else. And that way it's not just a one way, they're just consuming and consuming and consuming. And then your brain just kind of gets all jumbled up because you've been doing one thing for so long. And so, and that's the generation today, is like, they're very hooked on video. And I want to try to teach my kids, like, hey, you could create something. You could do something for yourself rather than just watching somebody do. Like, you've seen like how people play the games on YouTube, right? And then you're just watching the person play the game. And so sometimes I tell them, like, why don't you play the game rather than watching the person play the game? It'd be better if you did that instead of watching them. And so I try to get them in that same mindset, which is why I try to teach my daughter to code so she could do it herself, and then she can see the possibilities. And I think I have that imagined, as well as like bringing my family to WLPC and maybe my kids presenting at some point, and that'd be interesting. But Rasika, I know
nice. Yeah,
it would be nice, to see your kids go up there on stage, and you're now just the one watching versus you presenting.
That that happened to Ben last year when his son came, and his son is like still in high school, and he's like presenting like he's done this like all his life. I was like, wow. I told Ben, I was like, man, you must be proud of your son, because he did a great job.
Well, at WLPC Prague, did you guys meet Dobius's son? He was there.
I wasn't there, so
he got
last year,
that's right. You weren't there, Francois, but he got sick along the ways and during this conference. But he was there, and he's in IT also, so he was very much doing IT. And I asked him, like, hey, when are you going to present up on stage? Because I'd like to hear like your perspective, because I know we hear from a lot of the same people, right? And to me, I like to hear from somebody fresh, somebody new perspectives. Not to say that the presenters we usually see aren't good. I hear a lot from them all the time. I'd like to at least change it up and encourage others to present. I've even given other people ideas that I had for presenting. I gave it to somebody else. I said, hey, you should present on this. Here's the idea. How about you run with it? Go and present.
That's why I like Waiko as well too, because if you have never presented something, you can do it in an environment where you're not recorded and where it's a smaller community, and then you can step it up to WLPC after that. Yeah.
Good practice, huh? Well, Rasika, I know you've spent a lot of time with us here today. I want to thank you for joining us here on the podcast. Why don't you tell people where they could find you? I know you're doing consulting now, so why don't you tell people where they can go and ask you for help and get your services?
Yeah, actually, like my blog, basically MRN CCIW, my CCI wireless journey, mrncciw.com. But my company name also start with MRN, mrnnetworks.com, so then you can basically reach out to me through that, either, my company page or my blog. Otherwise, I think probably I can add my LinkedIn profile, or, probably you can share those details, my social media contact detail. Probably they can reach out those methods as well. Yeah, so now if you have any sort of, if a customer has any sort of consulting kind of need, like a teaching or others consulting works, that's a sort of a preferred side of the works, yeah, they can reach
And
out to me. I really like to, uh, provide my support or service.
awesome. We'll put the links in the show notes, MRN, CCIE, MRNnetworks.com, and then your
Yeah.
LinkedIn profile, and then yeah, and then people can reach out to you. Awesome. Well, thank you, Rasika. Thank you for your time. Thank
Thank
you,
you very much,
everyone, for
having me.
listening. Yeah, it's always a pleasure. So it's a pleasure. And, this Wi-Fi Origin series will continue. We're going to have more people on the show to talk about their Wi-Fi stories. And if you are interested in coming in and participating and sharing your story, feel free to reach out to Roel and I. And, we're always interested in listening from new people. So, and everyone always have something interesting to share. So, and we are starting to get people from all over the world. So if you are in South America, in Africa, in countries that we don't usually get to talk about, feel free to send us a message, and we'll be glad to have you on the show.
All right, thank you, Rasika, for joining us. And if you guys have any comments, feel free to put them down below in the comment section. And we'll see you guys on the next episode. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.